Thank you very much, Pastry Time. 4-2 in favor of Flash Wolves was the way that we came into this series. 5-4 in favor of SKT, rather, is the way that we exit. A swift 3-0 to move on to the finals. Again, you two called it. Had a lot of confidence in SKT's ability once we get to those best-of-5s and bracket stage. Seems like they had Flash Wolves' number across the board.
What a fantastic performance. I think G2 will be very scared to face off against them in the final.
Yeah, I mean, that's some wishful thinking there, Krevo. But, I mean, they really were outclassed, right? Like, let's be honest here. SKT across the board, I think they looked extremely strong. You know, they looked versatile. They showed, once again, protect the AD carry composition, which they hadn't really been playing. So I think that it's such an impressive showing from them. Absolutely.
We'll get a word with Huni, too, in just a couple of minutes. Before we do so, I want to go back to your point around variance, what you brought up here going into Game 3, and how it kind of, you know, supports this point you're making here, Azale, where outclassed across the board, it almost seems like you have to rely on the day to just be performing better. And today, Faker stepped up, had a much better performance than he had during the group stage, and that pretty much puts the kibosh on any chance here for the Flash Wolves.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked a lot about on the desk how we were expecting them to try to draft early aggressive, and you know, a lot of people online are talking about this as well. But you have to keep in mind that they may have run these in scrims and failed time and time again, and that's often why you see teams run these other drafts and be like, it doesn't really make sense. Why aren't they playing Elise? Well, they may have gone 0-10 against them in scrims.
I mean, this comp in the end was actually pretty good. I liked it. I think Ivern with Lucian is something Kobe has talked about doing this tournament. You can give Lucian the buffs, you know, through Ivern as well. You're trying to snowball the mid lane with this AD carry, and you try and use that to kind of get an advantage, and then also have like late game team fighting with double AD carry, basically. Right. I think the comp made sense. It's just...
Is Karsa the guy you want on Ivern, though? Your best player?
Yeah, that's the problem.
There's definitely a question there. To be fair, though, they tried something different, right? Which is what we asked them to do. You know, kind of running a similar comp games 1 and 2. Here, they try a different look. And also, hey, Karsa managed to get the first blood on Delusion with a very interesting Ivern.
Clearly, Ivern God. You know.
Yeah, very much an Ivern God with the zoning flash. It works out for him. But again, that kill was not enough. We talk about needing large early game advantages to push against SKT. That wasn't enough. We're going to take a look at one replay, our only replay for this game, Acer-worthy replay of the bot lane here for SKT. But we're going to give it to you with Flash Wolves' perspective.
Yeah, and this is one of those situations where Flash Wolves bot lane just plays a little bit better. Game 1 similar as well. They actually get a kill here because you'll see Betty move forward. He has to guess where Bang is. Guess is wrong, then the shield comes up, then there's another incident, whether it was a heal or something, and suddenly this gets turned around, but like Bang should be dead there. If that ward comes out earlier, you know you're playing versus a guy who's going to walk into the brush. If you play that a little bit better in a lot of these situations, then suddenly Flash Wolves bot lane starts actually winning.
Start getting some kills. Obviously, Graves was still on the way down to turn it around, and I'm sure Wolf would have picked up a kill, but
Look at that goal grab.
I mean, it's been every game.
Pretty much a straight 45-degree line there, shooting up from the beginning, you know, from that 8-minute mark.
Last game was the same as well, you know, just get an early advantage and snowball. But I want to go back to your point, Azale, about, you know, Karsa on Ivern. And I think that's a really interesting thing and a very hard thing when you're playing against SKT, because you want to be able to play like every kind of style in the meta. Sometimes that involves your star player being on a supportive pick like Ivern. The problem is most teams in the world don't have like star players in every role, so they can't actually do that. They can't really rely on Karsa on the supportive champion. SKT is like Peanut support, sure, Huni carries, Faker carries, Bang carries, Wolf carries, it doesn't matter. Anyone can play a tank or support on that team, and someone else will step up.
Yeah, but do you want Karsa buffing up Betty? Is that your
exactly?
guy
Flash Wolves can't actually, you know, do
one
the same.
Q off. If he lands that Q.
Yeah, but I mean, credit to the SKT bot lane for playing it that well. I think so many Twitches would have just been flashing away towards their turret, just trying to retreat towards the grave, perhaps, something like that. But he recognizes there's not vision in the brush, flashes in there, and those little plays are often what makes the difference, because, you know, it was another game as well where Wolf is barely living, and they don't barely win these fights by mistake.
And it goes back to the whole point in discussion around SKT's drafting, right? And how it feels like every time we get through Champion Select, we go, that's a great comp for SKT.
That's a great pick for that player.
No matter what they do, we're always like, that's a great comp for SKT, right? And it's to that point that they have such a diverse playbook. Yes. They have a strategy that's built behind every single individual. So they have so many different looks. It's like, oh, you want to ban out our ADC? Great, we're just going to play through Faker this game. Oh, you want to ban out Faker? Great, we'll play through Huni this game. How do you attack this squad? I mean, besides, again, we always return to this idea of like, play your own game then and focus on getting those early advantages against SKT and hope it's enough.
I think you need to be a team that can do basically the same. Like, you need also those 5-star players where you have the flexibility to play whatever kind of comp is the best in the current meta, and also depending on the current draft. very few teams in the world can do that.
I was about to say, is it fair to say that that team doesn't exist right now? I mean, a lot of people would look
clearly,
at
very clearly.
right? A lot of people would look at KT within the LCK specifically as, again, this was a team that was built to combat SKT. Okay, well, they're not here. So then you're looking at the next two rosters that have the option of going up against SKT in the finals. And let's kind of maybe transition the conversation over there. I know you guys will be happy to talk about G2, but we're also going to have to talk about WE. Between those two rosters, who has more tools to go up against SKT?
I mean, the way you beat SKT is you get a foundation of 5 good players, and then you get a wealth of experience. That is like, the experience was lacking in KT. When I look at WE or G2, I see some good players, but there's not even the experience right there. So maybe like this tournament, WE is outperforming, at least in the early aggression, in the just kind of flick the switch and go in style. So there, WE has the edge.
So taking down SKT is like a 2-year endeavor, is what you're telling me. Like, you need to be willing.
Yeah, that's SKT itself has been a 4-year endeavor on the foundation with the same coaches, with Faker right there. So like, how are you going to beat the team that has some of the best players in the world?
Right, proof is in the pudding, right? I mean, this team has stuck together. They've got the infrastructure. They've got, you know, all the tools. They built around a couple strong players, and they've built themselves up to this king-like status. Well, most teams don't even go through an entire year without seeing some kind of a change, whether it be on the roster itself or through the coaching staff. There's an argument to be made here that, you know, SKT is really laying kind of the groundwork and the framework that a lot of other organizations might need to start recognizing and say, maybe we should invest more than 6 months into, you know, a certain roster or into.
To be fair though, SKT changes their roster a lot, right? And they do keep the same foundation, but this is new players this year. There was new players last year. You know, Easy went out the door, like Banky out the door. These are guys that were with the team for a really long time. Marin, you know, Duke, like their top laners and stuff are always changing. So they just seem to have the foundation. And I think it's also something to be said for the organization where everyone knows that SKT is essentially success in League of Legends. And people go there to win world championships, and they're willing to fully buy in and commit to this system because they know that it works.
100%, and teams are trying, obviously, to do what they're doing. They're trying to pick up Korean coaches, you know, bring them over to the West, Korean players as well, and that's not really the way forward to then beat Korea, because these teams will never be as good as a team that can also fully communicate with each other in the same language.
All right, well, we're going to turn to player of the series here. Going to be awarded to Faker. Now, it was a tight race from, I know, you guys here on the analyst desk in terms of your votes, but this guy here building up massive CS advantages, especially in games 2 and 3. I mean, really, truly, bracket stage Faker came out today.
I mean, yeah, we talked about how during the group stage, there were some shaky performances. He was under a lot of pressure from Kasa and Mabel, and him being able to then win his lane so hard, you know, kind of withstand all these different ganks, just shows how good this man is whenever he really wants to show up and perform.
I do want to highlight Wolf, though, as a player. I do not think Wolf could have played the series much better than he did. He is in a lineup with 4 carries where he often gets overshadowed, but when you look at his play, you can't say, what should he have done differently here? Like perfect shields, perfect buff ups in terms of health on the different carries that are getting sieged upon, goes in for aggressive flashes and ultis. The problem is his role just doesn't bring that much flash to the table, you know, and it doesn't have that much impact either. Faker with one great play early single-handedly decides the game. Obviously much more relevant in terms of MVP performance, but I think Wolf played nearly the perfect series.
Yeah, and Wolf is always in the right place at the right time, but it's, you know, often unless you are on that big playmaker like Modest Alistar or something like that, then it is hard to win those players of the game. But the most impressive part of this series for me from Faker was that he's 0-0-0 and he solo carried that game. Like, you know, he smashed Maple so hard on LeBlanc in the Casio matchup that that's rare to see.
I think the other major thing for me, at least in terms of the Faker player of the series vote here, is the fact that we were looking at Maple and Karsa, right? Again, you always point to those two guys as being the members of Flash Wolves that will be their key to success. Well, Faker can single-handedly shut one, if not 2 of them down just by pulling all that attention there, then he's done his job now. It's time to check in, though, with Shox for a word with SKT's victorious top laner.
Guys, I'm joined by a very happy and chipper Huni after SKT beat Flash Wolves 3-0, and it was a very, very dominating 3 games. And because of your history, of the history of SKT with the Flash Wolves, many people had thought maybe it'd be a bit more difficult. But why do you think in this best of 5 it went so smooth?
First of all, during the scrim, there was a lot of problem for us, and then we learned actually really, really a lot from other team, which is like could be WE, like G2, and we adapted really fast during the MSI, because a lot of people says in just during MSI there's a lot of and really fast the meta shift, and then I think SKT is just really good at adapting the meta, so that's why SKT is really strong at best of 5. So that's all. That's our results.
Yeah, that was also very clear. I love that you talk about the fact that the scrims were a bit difficult. And obviously, you ended the group stage on a kind of a false note that not winning versus WE must have been quite crushing, especially after you were so confident in that interview with me. SKT unbeatable. We are not going to drop a game. So was there a mental change for Huni, or was it still the same?
Still the same, but from the WE and the Flash Wolves, after we lost against them, and then we actually learned a lot, even though it was not Scream, it was on stage, and then we learned actually more than Scream. And we made a lot of mistakes in ourselves, and then we realized we need to play in our side to not make mistake, because enemy team also make a lot of mistake, and then we just trying to catch enemy, though what did they make like mistake, and then we need to fix our like faults. So from there, I think just we made really a clean game today.
Yeah, you guys said a statement today. You're going into the final in a BBL versus G2 or versus WE, teams with very different styles. So who do you think you're going to face? Who's going to win? And who would you like to face?
As I see, just in group stage, it was WE was quite stronger than G2, as you guys see the record, because the result. The WE has more win against other team, and their style, their playing style is really, really stronger, like and way more aggressive. So from there, right now, this meta is the laning phase is really most important thing that to lead the Summer's Rift. So from there, I think WE has kind of ahead against G2, but I would like to just against anyone. I don't care. I'm not worried anything.
You're not worried at all, it seems. I do want to ask you about something. The Lucian. Lucian mid is there. We've seen it. And I don't know how much you know about the Lucian memes that are surrounding Huni and that are still alive in EU and NA. Do you know anything about it, or?
I don't know. What did I play Lucian something at all? Yeah. I have zero idea about that. But yeah, I'm actually. It's possible to play. It's fine.
Top lane?
Yeah.
Are you allowed to speak about it with too much, or do you want to play it, Huni?
Yeah, I want to play.
All right. Well, finally, we'll be seeing you in the final. How do you reflect on your time so far in Brazil and in front of the crowd? Do you think you've put up enough of good of a show and good results so far for you personally?
Personally, I think it's really nice places in Brazil, and then I come back in MSI. It's really awesome, and then I really want to win MSI badly. So we will see you on the finals. See you.
Yeah, we will see. Maybe talk to you then. Thank you very much, Huni. Back to you guys.
Thank you very much, Shocks. With their victory, SKT have earned their spot in the finals on Sunday, and they'll face the winner of tomorrow's match as the LPL's Team WE take to the stage versus EU's G2 Esports. And this is where I want to go back to Huni and what he said there in that interview. He's calling for WE being the stronger of the two teams, both based on record, but also on their style of play, saying that he thinks the way that they've approached at least the group stages, being a little bit more aggressive and having stronger control of the lanes, will be what nets them the victory in that best of 5.
It will definitely be a nice contrast. I don't think we can say that G2 has played an aggressive early game at all, and WE definitely has done exactly that. And then G2 excelled in late game. Quite ironic, actually, since WE traditionally in the LPL was more of a G2 style team.
Yeah, but I mean, Huni talked about the meta, and he thinks that the best way to play is through laning. You know, powerful laning equals the results in the late game, and we've seen like some of the shifts in MSI that he's talking about, and that could be directly a result of their practice coming into this tournament, trying to adjust their style to the meta that we're seeing.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that a lot of people are kind of hyping up G2 a bit for this game, because I think WE look way stronger than G2 Esports. Both early game, but also mid to late game, WE are actually able to close out games pretty effectively. They've had some issues against SKT with like Baron steals, but outside of those small like mistakes right there, they actually played awesome games against SKT when they were ahead as well in both the games, despite losing one of them. So I think WE look way stronger and will be much better against SKT compared to G2.
Yeah, with how fast WE as a team tried to collectively punish mistakes is actually quite impressive to watch. Like, they only need one overstep for the entire team to go in and try and punish that. G2, I feel like their comms are more like, guys, do we want to punish this? Yes, everybody agree? Okay, then maybe let's start. What do we do? Okay, you go first. By that time, the window is closed, especially against WE, let alone against SKT in the final. So for the sake of the tournament, I think it's best that WE advances, but sadly we'll see a major upset and then G2 will take it anyways.
I mean, even
I think you'll get over it if that upset occurs.
Maybe.
I mean, even based on what we were talking about today, right? This idea that, okay, SKT can carry from any lane, right? They can win from any position.
Yep.
I feel like looking at the WE roster, there are more tools to victory there across the board, the roster that itself for that squad than there is maybe for G2, where we've seen mostly reliance on either Sven in the late game or some kind of miracle work by Perks.
Yeah, honestly, G2 is just Perks and Sven when it comes to carries right now. They're not going to rely and expect top lane to be a carry. They've shown they can rely on him on a tank, which is, of course, good. And then Mithy down the bot lane is trying his best to just support these two carries in Perks and Sven, while Trick has then been that massive weak link that's been a liability for these guys. So, yeah, they're relying on two guys only. WE definitely can rely on the jungler Condi much more than G2 can do, and that might be one of the big things in this BO5 that goes in favor of WE.
I mean, and then if we look at that top lane matchup specifically, you know, assuming that WE moves on to face SKT, looking at 957 versus Huni, I think you have a little bit more of the, you know, potential to see the fighter versus fighter matchups, right? You have the Kled, you know he can play the Fizz as well, so it's not like today where we feel like it's, you know, it's Fizz or nothing for MMD. Otherwise, he's onto that Nautilus or the Shen and playing more of a tanky matchup. So again, possibility of more contention, at least in the lanes for WE up against SKT. But specifically in the G2 versus WE matchup, I think that top jungle duo for both teams is going to be so important. As you mentioned, Trick being an underperformer so far in the tournament, not even kind of mirroring his own domestic performance in terms of the early deaths that he's given up, whereas Condi has shown a fairly consistent performance.
Yeah.
I mean, you said it all right there. I just wish we saw EU Trick, because I think EU Trick could go toe-to-toe with Condi. This guy is a double MVP in the European LCS, shows up on stage, and he's almost like embarrassing to his former play level. Need to see if he developed another pick, you know, picked up the Elise so we can get rid of the Nunu and hopefully see a better performance.
I mean, I think it's also just based on the meta. It's not just, you know, his own performance being much worse. Like, this meta for Trick is just not very good because it relies a lot on your early game ganking, you know, to kind of set up these lanes very effectively on things like Lee Sin. He doesn't really play this champion. Elise is not a great pick for him either, 'cause he doesn't like the style. So because he basically only can play towards the late game, and he makes some of these early mistakes, then the laners from G2, who are actually doing just fine, have to surrender the early game pressure because they're basically playing 1v2 or 2v3, and then you can't obviously play aggressive, and that's why they play so passive and just kind of give up a lot of gold early.
And that's why it's so tough, especially if we're in this win lane, win game type meta. You need your jungler to be able to react to this and to be able to get something done in the early game. And the fact that Lee Sin has been the clear #1 jungle pick in the tournament and you can't play it or can't play it to that level is even just a big weakness as far as the drafting phase goes. Because, you know, we see even today, obviously SKT just crushed the Flash Wolves, but, you know, SKT did ban out Lee Sin every single time. Things like that is something that you don't even have to rely on in draft phase.
Now, the last thing I want to talk about, because Huni spoke about it as well, is SKT as an organization has always shown incredible ability to adapt to metas, you know, within tournaments, move into those best of fives with the strong strategy. We've heard, right, and we've seen domestically that G2 as well has, you know, has displayed dominance in best of fives. But funnily enough, they have not competed in a best of five internationally yet. So, you know, the max they've done best of three. We'll see. We'll have to wait and see, kind of on bated breath, whether or not domestic G2, you know, kind of goes on display tomorrow in the best of fives.
The one thing that helped them there, though, in Europe at least, is whenever they had these stellar best of five performances, is that they had a strong foundation. Like, they had enough picks to play with. They also had skill disparity, and it's much harder right here. Like Martin pointed out, if Trick can only play one style jungler, which is based around efficiency clearing and scaling for the late game, it doesn't matter how well you can adapt kind of around that. You're roadblocked in that regard. So hopefully they can, however, cater their practice around that and fix that in the few days that they had.
Yeah, I think, though, if you are G2, we might see them just say, you know what, guys, we have to rely on the late game like we've done before. It's worked. You know, they've won a few games with it. It's certainly a style you can maybe win a game with, or maybe two. There's also the one where you say, you know, let's play around Perks. Give him a carry. Like, give him just like an assassin in the mid lane. Try and camp that lane as much as possible. He's been one of the best performing players at this tournament. And you try and play that style. There are two options. I don't really have a third one, though.
All right, well, it's one thing to know the meta. It's another to be able to play within it. Now, make sure to tune in for that semifinal showdown between Team WE and G2 tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central European Summertime for our EU friends. But now, for myself, the casters, analysts, and the entire live broadcast crew, thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.